Midday Kentucky cooking segment brought to you by Creative Kitchen and Bath, where you will always cook in style.
Welcome back to Midday Kentucky. Chef Allison Davis here in the Wild Time Kitchen, and we are located over in the Shinaway Shops where we do cooking classes, catering, and private events. Today I am focusing in on another heart-healthy recipe that you can use all year long, and we all know that fish is definitely one of those things that we should incorporate weekly. I always try to encourage people to maybe cut down on the red meat during the week, maybe to 1 or 2 dinners a week, and then definitely try to incorporate fish as a protein more 2 to 3 times a week if you're not used to doing that. What I'm using today is cod, and cod I think is probably the most versatile and not as fishy as some of the fish that are out there. This one is a nice white flaky fish, and it's very easy to cook, and it's very easy to tell when it is fully cooked. A lot of people get intimidated when they're cooking fish because they don't know how to tell when it's done. What's great about cod, and I'll hold this up right here, is you can see kind of just the ridges before we even cook it. This is raw, but once it cooks and it's to the point of being done, you'll start to see that just flaking open, and then it's very easy to tell that it's ready to go. We're going to do a very unique kind of topping and sauce on this, so that's what we're going to start with. This is definitely more of a Mediterranean route, and so I'm just going to start with a little bit of sautéed onions, and I'm going to work these in the pan and just let those kind of sweat off a little bit, and then we're just going to add to this to kind of make a sauce that's going to go over the top with a little bit of cheese. So even though we're going heart healthy, that doesn't mean you have to cut out all the dairy and cut out the good fats that you might want to incorporate still into your dishes. So I'm going to work on a little bit of fresh herbs while our onions are sautéing there. And we're just going to take some parsley and just kind of give it a rough chop. I love using fresh herbs. You see me using this a lot in my recipes over the dried. I just feel like you get a lot more flavor and just punch from the fresh herbs than you do from dried. The great rule of thumb, and I know I've mentioned this in the past, but if you are using fresh herbs to dried, there's a ratio that you want to go with, especially if your recipe calls for dried. Always go 3 to 1 with your fresh herbs to your dried, because the dried are actually more heavily concentrated, so you don't need as much of the dried herbs as you do of the fresh. All right, in addition to the parsley, we are going to add in some fresh oregano, and I can't tell you how much I love oregano with seafood. It's just one of my favorites. Oregano, garlic, and red pepper flake, those are kind of like my go-to staples if I'm just at home and I'm whipping something up quickly. And seafood, another great thing about it is it cooks so quickly, so if you're kind of doing a weeknight dinner and trying to get it in and get it to the table pretty quickly, seafood, shrimp, fish, it's all going to cook in about half the time of chicken or pork or beef. All right, so now we've got our oregano and our parsley chopped up, and our onions are getting a nice simmer here. My handle's a little hot. So we're starting to sweat our onions a little bit. To this, I'm going to add some tomatoes. And then we're just going to start to deglaze this pan with a little bit of white wine. Just FYI, in the beginning I did have a little bit of olive oil in the pan before I added in the onions. You could also go with a little bit of butter if you want. All right, so we're going to season up our tomatoes and onions with a little bit of salt and pepper. Which I've got a little pepper here. And then we're going to add, in addition to the red wine, or in addition to the white wine, I'm going to add just a splash of kind of red wine vinegar. That's going to bring a little bit of acidity. If you didn't have that, you could certainly sub in some balsamic or sub in some white wine vinegar, or even a little bit of fresh lemon juice. All right, we've added in our fresh herbs, and basically what's going to happen now is I'm going to take this, and we're just going to kind of take this with a spoon, and we're going to just take this, kind of put right over top of our fish. All right, and so this is going to cook in the oven. Okay, so lastly we're going to sprinkle it with some fresh herbs, and what's going to make this super yummy and creamy is we're going to sprinkle it with that little bit of feta cheese. That's going to melt over top of this fish. Everything's going to blister up and cook beautifully. And we're going to pop this into the oven at 400 degrees for about 15 minutes, and then we're going to plate this up. All right, and about 15 minutes later, you've got this beautiful fish that you can easily see is flaking apart, like I said, and that's just the real indication that your fish is cooked all the way through. All right, tomatoes, and look at the nice blistering of the feta cheese. We're going to plate this up, and trust me, I'm going to enjoy this for lunch. You can find this recipe at Midday Kentucky /recipes tab, and you're watching Midday Kentucky, and I'm Chef Allison Davis. We'll be right back after this short break.